let's switch gears here. Christian in Newport Beach, California. He has Chris Ivory. He wants to know if he should trade him for Antonio Brown.
Ooh. Yeah.
You say yeah very quickly. Now, I want to talk about Ivory because if you take out his gooser, which is, I think you should take his gooser out if you want to know how good of a player he is because he didn't play, right? Like if he had played and got 0. If you take that out, he is the number 3 running back in fantasy football right now.
You mean giving him his average?
Yeah, if you just average the 3 games he's actually played in, he's number 3 in terms of points per game. That's just context. I'm not saying I wouldn't do the trade for Antonio Brown. Brown's got the Big Ben thing week 7 maybe.
I get all that. One thing that makes my consideration very easy is the fact that he's on bye this week. We just kind of talked about that. So if you need a player, you're trading a guy who's not playing for one of the best wide receivers.
Well, Brown will go on bye though.
Sure, but you can prepare for that. I mean, this week
we didn't even talk. Did we talk about Big Ben? Sorry, I was looking at a hilarious text message.
Okay.
Did we mention that Big Ben there's talk of him being back week 7?
I mentioned it just now while you were on the text message.
Sorry. Well, someone had offered my friend Mike Wallace for Todd Gurley.
Oh, what a steal.
Wow.
So I had to send him a ha 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 string. Yeah. Sorry.
Alrighty. So you would do the deal because you like Antonio Brown more, or is it the buy thing?
No, it's definitely because I like Antonio Brown more. The buy factors in minutely, but I like Antonio Brown more for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is because Chris Ivory is my favorite preseason pick. I loved him coming in, but the knock on him has always been health. We've already seen him sit out of a game, and so this is what I tell people: if Chris Ivory's playing, he's an RB1. But I have to say that every time I talk about Chris Ivory. I don't feel like I have to say that with Antonio Brown. I just say you play Antonio Brown. It's not if he's playing. And so that's kind of one of those other considerations is the history going, projecting forward.
I would take Antonio Brown too.
Yeah, and here's what you need to look at. Week 1, if someone had if you're the Ivory owner and someone had said, "Hey, I'll give you Antonio Brown for Chris Ivory," what would you have said?
Well, you would have said yeah,
immediately. Week 2, what would you have said? But so basically, every week and before Big Ben got hurt,
right?
This trade is impossible. So I would make
things change.
Things change, but Big Ben will be back.
Yep,
according to reports.
Okay, let's just pretending Ivory's the number 3 guy rest of season.
Then I would
rather do the deal.
No, I would rather have the number 3 running back versus, let's say, Antonio Brown finishes number 3 wide receiver. I would rather have the number 3 running back than I would the number 3 wide receiver.
It's just fun to talk about because this happens every year. We draft all these running backs in the beginning of the first round, and half of them end up there and half of them don't. And Ivory's the kind of guy that can jump into that spot. There are other guys. Deion Lewis right now is in that spot. So Dave in Florida wants to know, who would you start this week between Alex Smith and Jay Cutler?
Jay Cutler. We actually kind of just talked about this on yesterday's show.
Yeah, but more than just that, I was really going back and forth between these exact 2 guys who are in a matchup against each other as my start of the week. I was telling these 2 guys beforehand, man, I'm going back and forth, Alex Smith or Jay Cutler. Who do I take? And here was the tiebreaker for me, is that the Chicago Bears, as bad as they've been as far as giving up points, they have barely given up yards. They've held 3 of their 4 opponents under 200 yards. And so I think Alex Smith is going to, he's not a huge yardage guy, so you're not going to get a ton of yards from him. So I went with Jay Cutler.
This is just kind of off cuff. I want to test your Jeremy Maclin love.
Uh-oh.
Just a question, hypothetical question. Let's say you have an injured Alshon Jeffrey on your bench. Someone offers you Maclin for Jeffrey, straight up. Would you take that?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to see how far the rabbit hole went.
No. If Jeffrey keeps missing games, I'm going to wish I had. That's for sure. Yep. But no, not right now. That's a good question. All right, Danielle in San Francisco has a question about TJ Yeldon. So I want to talk about TJ Yeldon today as well. She's been offered Brandon Cooks or Vincent Jackson for him straight up. Which I think we all say no.
I would say I would consider Vincent Jackson depending on team makeup, but generally in a vacuum, no.
Now, Yeldon had his first 100-yard game of his career. He hasn't scored this season. What are your guys' thoughts on the Jaguar, TJ Yeldon, the workload monster. I think he's third in the league in carries right now.
That's the problem, is that is the team. He's
That's
just
a problem?
No. The
Jaguar
The Jaguar problem, because he's on a team that's limiting his scoring potential, his offensive output. And so he reminds me a lot of Melvin Gordon in the sense that he's getting the work and he looks all right, but the touchdowns just don't seem to be there. So for me, that's how I feel about Yeldon. That being said, in a vacuum, I would rather have the running back who's getting work and slightly underperforming your hopes than the wide receivers who are doing the exact same thing. And those, I would say both Vincent Jackson and Cooks kind of fall into that category.
David Johnson is currently, at least in our league scoring format, which is slightly different, it's half-point PPR. David Johnson is where?
He's still very high.
Where do you – that's what I'm asking.
He's a top 20 running back, I would think.
He's 14.
Yeah.
He's ahead – here's who David Johnson's currently ahead of. Deion Lewis. I'm not going to say Lev.
Not on average.
Huh?
Deion Lewis had a bye.
Oh, you're right. No, I'm sorry. Jeremy Hill, though. Doug Martin. Frank Gore. Justin Forsett, Eddie Lacy, TJ Yeldon, all guys that played. Just kind of incredible to me. He's one of those David Johnson's like Gio, or even less than, where you hate. I personally hate starting running backs that are in those miscellaneous random timeshares where you don't know what they're going to get. But I'm just noting it because it's crazy to me. I mean, he's really high.
Touchdowns for David Johnson's value to be there. The cool thing is he's been scoring touchdowns.
What song did you sing when he fumbled the opening kickoff?
David.
I went with "Hello, Darkness, my old friend."
Chris in San Francisco. My forte for his Antonio Brown.
That's interest. That's
testing the water here because I see Chris Ivory.
I was just gonna say, who do you want, Ivory or Matt Forte?
I would rather have Matt Forte than Chris Ivory.
I think I'd rather have Ivory.
I'd rather have Forte.
Yeah, so
because Matt Forte doesn't come off the field for Bilal Powell on third down.
Yeah, Matt Forte is the guy I would rather have. I would still rather have Antonio Brown, but this is completely team dependent because if you need a running back, which I would say more teams need a running back than they need a wide receiver, then Forte.
All right, Bobby in Utah has a question about Forsett. He says, should he trade him straight up for Julian Edelman? And so I bring this question up because I want you to speak to that trade, and I want to talk about Julian Edelman. This is kind of we're a quarter of the way through the NFL season. I'm bringing up guys that I believe need to be discussed again from draft time. We didn't talk enough about Edelman. Edelman has been dominant.
And you said Forsett?
Forsett for a straight-up trade for Edelman.
If this is if it's a PPR league, I would do it.
It is a standard league.
Then I would not. I would keep Forsett.
I would probably still go Edelman. Obviously, this is whenever you're talking running back, wide receiver, it's team needs. But Edelman is so incredibly involved. Check this out. What rank do you think Edelman is in targets?
In the league?
Yeah.
The NFL?
Not on average, on total targets, having played only 3 games because they were on bye.
I would say he's in the top 5.
We're counting.
He's 10. He's the 10th best, despite missing a game. If you give him that 4th game on the same average, he's the clear-cut number 1 guy. So, that's just...
I thought he was tied with Julio, and then Julio had more than him on week 3.
Oh, he might be behind. Well, and also DeAndre Hopkins had 22 targets last week.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that kind of helps skew a target.
I didn't reap him. He was my number 1.
Wow. No, I thought Steve Smith.
That's standard.
That's not fun to talk about.
We only talk about your failings.
It's more fun when you kill guys.
I know. I just like being right every once in a while. Remember that YouTube guy? He doesn't like me. I want him to know.
Whatever.
Just kidding.
But I would keep Forsett. The offensive line, maybe it was just against the Steelers. I don't know. But the line looked like they were getting it together in Baltimore, and that's what Forsett really needs.
So all right. For clarification on targets here, he actually does beat Julio Jones. He is ahead of Julio on targets at the pace he was on. However, behind the new number 1, which is DeAndre Hopkins, because of 22 targets.
Is that because Julio didn't have to play on Sunday?
Yeah, probably.
He was on a bye as well. He was on a half bye, thanks to the
Devonta Freeman.